Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and we're going to look today at recent sales for the vintage collection. Before we dig in any further, I want to say thank you to a few folks. First, J.R. Freeman. He just became a Patreon member, so thank you very much, JR, for becoming a Patreon member. Patreon.com/actionfiguregrader is my Patreon. And then I also received two very generous supers. First, Dwayne Custer. He is a Patreon supporter. He sent me one. Thank you, Dwayne. That's very kind of you and totally unnecessary. And then Trilogy Hunter 77 sent me a very generous YouTube super, and he sent a bunch over the years. Thank you very much, Anthony, for the YouTube super. Absolutely unnecessary, but very kind of you for you guys to support the channel. Nothing too crazy in today's video, but we've got some vintage collection, some older releases, some newer releases, a couple of vehicles, some pack-ins and store exclusives, and then a few graded items to finish things off. Just wanted to kind of give you an update on where things stand. And one thing I did notice on Facebook is that people are starting to notice that, for the most part, there are exceptions like this unpunched VC04 Luke Bespin, but in general, it is a buyer's market right now, and prices have really come down for even the more desirable, harder to find variants for the vintage collection, as we'll go through them. But Power Droid had a few sales that I wanted to cover. First was yet another unpunched VC04 Luke Bespin. This is a very desirable variant that's tough to get unpunched, and you can see that reflected in the sales price. This one sold for $500. That's the biggest number I've seen in a little bit for an unpunched VC04. Very tough to get that one. So VC04, $500. Big number there. They had a punched example of the Canadian Darth Vader VC08, the Empire Strikes Back version with the Boba Fett error. That's a pretty well-known error from the Canadian line for some of the early TVC. This one was listed for $120. The best offer accepted on that was $100. Pretty good price there for an error Canadian Darth Vader. Power Droid also had this Commander Gree. That one sold for $120. Again, an unpunched example. You might pick that one up for closer to $100. We've even seen some at auction that are unpunched go for sub $100. It just depends on condition. And let's face it, also seller reputation. This seller is known to have very high quality, case fresh, unpunched examples. So people are willing to pay a little bit of a premium. And I don't blame you, because you know you're going to get the item and you know it's going to be really nice. I've just heard from a number of you that have bought from this particular seller in the US and been very happy. This was a foil example of Clone Commander Cody. This one sold for $110. And that's kind of right in line with recent sales that we've seen for the VC, was it 17, 19? VC 19 Clone Commander Cody, the foil example. We had a Canadian Boba Fett with the Boba Fett error. This was, again, a punched example. That one sold for $160. Pretty cool looking example there. I always like Boba Fett with the Boba Fett offer. Pretty unique and pretty desirable. And then here was a Return of the Jedi Boba Fett with the prototype Fett offer. This one was unpunched. It doesn't show the price there, but the price was $100. That one sold for $100. Pretty decent price there for a punched example of VC09 Return of the Jedi. Then this is what I'm talking about at the beginning of the video. I mean, when's the last time you've seen a VCP03 rocket firing Fett sell for $67? I mean, that is ridiculously cheap. It included the mailer box. The card looked to be in pretty good shape. I didn't really see anything major wrong with it, just some light edge wear to it. But man, $67. My, how they've come down. 67. I think someone saw over in the UK in that same Facebook post, just talking about it being a buyer's market. Somebody saw in an auction a VC, whatever it is, 102 Ahsoka, the original issue Ahsoka, sell for like $60. I mean, it's crazy how much these prices have really dropped. And that, part of that's a reissue. Part of it is just, it's a buyer's market for anything. Here's another one. I mean, this is another one that used to go for $80 to $100, and this one sold in an auction. This is the Luke Skywalker crate VC 146. That sold in an auction for $56. And, you know, again, I didn't really see much wrong with it, but that one has come down as well. Antok Merrick, you know, this one's kind of more in line with reasonable kind of fair market value. This one looked like it might have had a little ding in the lower left-hand corner. Still sold in an auction for $90. And yeah, I mean, you can see a crunch over. I see. To me, I wouldn't pay $90 for this, just given the major crunch that's on that card. On the back, you can see that by the VC 204. So this one had some rough edges to it and still sold at $90. Another example of ones that continue to drop in price. These used to go for $75 to $80 a piece. Now you can get both of them together. These are the Razor Crest pack-ins of Grogu with the Chrome Prom, along with the Off-World Jawa Elder from Arvala 7. Again, these were from the Razor Crest, and these sold for $80 free shipping for both of them together. And it's not like that was a one-off. Here was another one that was $75 free shipping. So pretty crazy to see how much they've dropped. I mean, those have basically dropped 50% in price. The pack-ins for the Ghost, on the other hand, they've kind of leveled out. They've basically stayed right at $250 for all four of them. For Era Syndulla, Ezra Bridger, Kanan Jarrus, as well as Zeb. And, you know, I found several different data points where they've all kind of been in that $250 price point. These four sold for $255 free shipping. Some recent releases that, again, will be worth $15 or less probably in 6 months. But we've got Agent Callus from the Rebels. That one sold for $135. And then the Jedi Survivor Night Sister Marin sold for $120 plus $9 shipping. So $130. So don't pay those kind of prices. Those will be readily available for probably 10 to 15% of those prices within the next 6 months. The Mouse Droid, we've got another Mouse Droid sale. This obviously is one of the pack-ins from the SDCC Death Star box set. This was sold by Star Wars Galaxies. That one sold for $750. That's a big number there. And then I've got some updates for the Kmart exclusive 2-packs that have really come down in price. This was the Ewok Scouts Kmart exclusive. That one sold for $66 plus $7 shipping. The Imperial Scanning Crew sold for $57 plus $7 shipping. I mean, these were very routinely $80 to $100 before. Here's the Ewok Assault Catapult. That one sold for $74 plus shipping. So pretty big drops on those. I'd say 30 to 40% price drops on those over the last 6 to 9 months. Star Wars Galaxies also had this beautiful Millennium Falcon first issue. This one sold for $939.97 plus shipping, so about $940. That's the second or third one that this particular seller has had, and they do look pretty much case fresh. So huge numbers for the original issue Millennium Falcon. And then let's talk about some graded items. You know, to me, I wouldn't pay this personally, but this was a CAS 80 plus for the Razor Crest pack-in version of the Mandalorian with the cloth goods cape and the kind of holes in the cape. It only got the 80 plus grade, which is crazy because, you know, it's really hard to get these less than like about a 90 grade, but there must have been something wrong with this particular one out of the factory to only get the 80 plus grade. But to me, you could probably buy it ungraded for like 50 or $60 and then grade it yourself and get a higher grade than that. But for whatever reason, that one still sold at $280. One of my favorites for 2023 was the Darth Vader duels, and I know it's a Darth Vader, and I know that they've had way too many Darth Vaders, but there's something about that cracked helmet that really pops. This was the fan channel exclusive 2-pack with Obi-Wan. This was an uncirculated 9.0. It doesn't show the price there, but the price sold was $160. $160 for an AFA uncirculated 9.0. And then Disruptor, very trusted seller. This seller had an uncirculated 9.0 Luke X-Wing. Got $180 for that big number there. He had the Darth Vader re-release on the Star Wars card That was an uncirculated 9.0. That one sold for $180. And then we had the corrected version of Boba Fett with the chest plate sensors. That one was an uncirculated 9.25 that sold for $230 plus shipping. So those are some huge numbers there. And then finally, I know it's not vintage collection, but I wanted to point out this sales price because that is a massive price. This is the prototype Darth Vader retro collection, the SDCC / Target exclusive, uncirculated 9.0, but that sold for $400 plus $16 shipping. I don't know if someone just had to have that particular yellow head or what, but that is a huge number there for the prototype Darth Vader from the retro collection. So that is it for recent sales for the vintage collection. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave me a like if you did. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.